30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
Is your business ready for digital transformation? The latest Wi-Fi technology is here, and it's Docomo Pacific's WorkPass, powered by Plume. WorkPass unlocks connectivity, productivity, and security tools all in the palm of your hand. Access features like adaptive Wi-Fi, guest and employee networks, evolving AI security, plus so much more. To learn more about WorkPass, visit business.docomopacific.com. Docomo Pacific Business. Work better together.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, so here's the drill for today, folks. I'm going to suggest that if you're listening on the radio, no problem. But if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you better get out your sunglasses. And put your sunglasses on. Okay, you got your sunglasses on. Are you ready now? Okay, Jose, cut to the host. There you go. This is my new red shirt.
Wow!
Yeah. Talk about a bright red shirt, huh? That is a bright red shirt if I ever seen one. What do you think, Jose?
It is bright red, absolutely, because you'll never be caught in an orange shirt.
Certainly not on a Monday.
Not on a Monday.
This is Red Shirt Monday. You know, Monday is traditions. It's Red Shirt Day. It's Hope Cristobal Screen Test Day. We have a problem with a screen test, Jose?
Yeah.
We may not be able to do it, huh?
It's not cooperating.
Surprise, surprise. Well, as soon as, if we can't do it today, we'll do it tomorrow. We wouldn't want to deprive our international radio viewing audience of the Hope Cristobal screen test. And, you know, when she finally gets cast in a movie in Hollywood, you'll all be able to say, yeah, I remember when Bob started her career right there on Tall Tales. The Angry Woman. Okay, let's switch to Zemi Ikotny. And it looks like the Daily News is threatening to run a real editorial again. Surprise, once again, surprise, surprise. Here's the title of it. Our view, incoming education leaders need to address disgusting conditions. Yeah, so they found a bird in the piano down at Southern High, which is kind of bad, but at least they haven't found any classified documents of Joe Biden's down there, so maybe it's not as bad as it could be, right? Yeah. Here's the editorial. Like many problems on Guam, the debate over how to address sanitation and problems at public schools has been going on for years. When a restaurant or other private establishment receives a D rating, they're closed until the problem, usually a cockroach infestation or other evidence of pests, is fixed. That's not the case with schools, at least not right now. Guam law gives failing schools a grace period until June 11, 2024 to correct deficiencies cited by public health. The problem is students will be in school each day with cockroaches, mold, broken air conditioners, closed restrooms, some of the problems mentioned in a recent inspection at Southern High. Nobody wants their children to spend their days in a building with bird and rodent droppings and standing water that could serve as a breeding ground for skaters. In the past, the argument has been that the education department doesn't have enough money to make all the repairs needed to keep schools safe. Fortunately, new leadership is in store at the Department of Ed. On Friday evening, the Board of Education approved a 4-year contract for Kenneth Eric Swanson, better known as Swanee here on Tall Tales. Swanee, how I love you. Yeah, that guy, who will be the new superintendent. Although he's scheduled to start on July 1, board members are asking if he can begin on March 1. Swanee will be paid $170,000 a year. I suspect that he really wanted to go to the port because he'd make more money at the port than he would at DOE. But Rory's already nailed that one down. Until he starts, former legislative speaker Judith Wonpat Ten, who is an expert on maneuvering the island's political system to achieve a higher pay raise for herself, beep, beep, will be acting superintendent. While Board of Education members are rightfully concerned about the department's budget, the safety and maintenance situation also needs to be addressed. Now, there are some things, when it comes to maintenance, there are some things that you kind of schedule them. You can't do everything at once. So there are some things that you schedule and you work through them as you can. Maybe there's a leak in the canopy between the building and between buildings, right? But some of this stuff has to be treated like a fire in a wastebasket. If there's a fire in your wastebasket, you don't put a note on your to-do list to fix it tomorrow. You run and get some water and put it out now.
Can I move it up to number 3?
Yeah, right. And that's the kind of stuff that's going on down in Southern High. This is fire in a wastebasket stuff. So if you got to do something dramatic, like pull some of your maintenance out of the other schools and take it down there to get that stuff fixed, that's what leaders do. That's kind of the military approach to leadership. If the enemy has broken through your line, you don't say, well, I've got reinforcements coming up in 2 weeks. When I get the reinforcements, no, you don't do that. You got to plug that leak now. And I'll give you a personal experience. We had a typhoon back in, it might have been Omar. I'm not quite clear on it. I should have looked it up. And we were assured that the schools were ready to open. I was director of corrections. And it turned out on Friday we discovered that the schools were not ready to open. So Lou Pangilinan, who was the Governor had as chief of staff at the time, summoned every single director in the government that had construction capability, plus the Seabees, Red Horse from the Air Force, etc., military folks that had construction capabilities, and we all sat down in a room. And she developed a list of what needed to be done, who could do it, when it could be done, what they'd need to do it, and she coordinated the whole thing as easily as she was coordinating a dinner for 4. It was one of the greatest performances of leadership that I've ever seen. So she pulled all of these, and we were involved because the Department of Corrections does have a construction capability. We had to do something at Kennedy. I don't remember what it was. But we pulled it all together. We worked our tails off, like 15 hours on Saturday, 15 hours on Sunday, maybe a little longer, and we got it all done. That's what leaders do. They don't say, well, the problem is that there are a lot of things that are broken, and it takes time to fix them. So as time goes on, No, that's not how you do it.
Maybe we'll see things done at the midnight hour.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's an experience I'll never forget. Swanee will be paid $170,000 a year. Okay, well, the board, our members are rightfully concerned about the budget. The safety and maintenance situation also needs to be addressed. And the word missing there is now. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when Swanee gets here, not after Wanpat 10 secures a raise for herself, but now. And unlike restaurant patrons who spend an hour sitting at a table in a D-rated establishment, students spend all day in schools, and then they go back day after day. This is not what we want for our children. All right, let's have a drum roll, Jose. Let's have the, there it is, the blue star goes to the post. Jose, can you pull up the weather service from hell? I want to see if they've got freezing temperatures down there.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
It's Canada.
Yeah, well, here, yeah.
Right next door.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought probably hell would freeze over before the Daily News got another blue star, but, well, actually they got one last week too, didn't they? So they're up to 87 now. Post 262, Daily News 87, Candid 10. Okay, and let's take a look at the card. Remember when I did Robert Underwood's column and he surfaced this, I thought, mythical beast called the Proud Boy Wannabe. And remember we put together, we developed a sketch of a Proud Boy Wannabe based on a picture of a manatee. There's a manatee. It's an aquatic animal that lives in Florida, South Florida. A cross between a manatee and a wallaby. And here you see the wallaby. They live down in Australia, and they get hopping around pretty fast. So we came up with the Proud Boy Wannabe, and this is what a Proud Boy Wannabe looks like. You notice he's got ears like the manatee. He's got a face kind of like the manatee. He's got a joey in his pouch. Joey's what Aussies called the little baby kangaroos in the pouch. Anyhow, that's the Proud Boy Wannabe. And when I read Underwood's column, Underwood said, we maybe don't have Proud Boys on the island, but we've got Proud Boy Wannabes. And that's what kicked off this whole exercise. And a friend called me and he said, Bob, that column's talking about you. So I embraced it, and I said, I sure hope he's talking about me. Because one of the things that Underwood accused the Proud Boy Wannabes of doing is mouthing a slogan, let's make Guam great again. So because of that, I now add a new item to the calendar every day in ways that I'm going to make Guam great again. And I'm up to number 10 now. Number 1, combat governmental identity politics. 2, advocate an efficient, effective government operating within the rule of law that provides basic government services on at least a break-even basis. 3, back the stationing of Marines on the island. 4, champion free speech. 5, root out systemic racism. 6, encourage a market economy and free enterprise. 7, combat abortion. 8, keep our government honest. 9, fight separatism. 10, oppose anti-militarism. And if you're looking for anti-militarism, check out Sabina Paris, who's a member of the Women's Anti-Militarism League or something like that. So moving on into the calendar, I start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And today it looks like Carmen and Frank Tenorio, not versus systemic racism, but embracing systemic racism. And Public Law 3634, there's an interesting item in the classifieds. And then I've got a Dr. Lobeck versus Kaneshiro and Radu. You remember Kaneshiro and Radu, the chemical abortion doctors from Honolulu. Then I've got the governor versus transparency and procurement law. And I've got a gay versus pride. And I've got babies versus the Food and Drug Administration. Governor Calvo versus Governor Leon Guerrero, as made known to us by Jungle Watch. So here we are. So let's start out with systemic racism. Now, you all know what the thrust of systemic racism is. Paul Zerzan wrote a letter to the Daily News saying, hey, guys, you know that rice that we see at every fiesta we go to that people have been calling red rice? It ain't red. It's orange. So let's start looking smart and calling it what it really is, not red rice, but orange rice. And, you know, there was a backlash. The Daily News canceled Paul Zerzan. and I embrace the whole kerfuffle, and I refer to it as systemic racism because it's a classic case of the narrative, regardless of how wrong the narrative is on the facts and the truth. The narrative tends to control the actual facts and the truth. The rice is orange, but we've been calling it red ever since. So how dare anybody call it anything but red rice? And others have picked up on it. Tim ran a column in Jungle Watch talking about Vanessa Williams. You all remember Vanessa and her famous quote. Just to make sure, let me go through it one more time. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. So Tim cited Vanessa as going for the narrative and not the facts, and let's see who else got involved in the whole systemic racism thing. Michael Bavacqua misquoting or only partially quoting an article from the university to prove that ancient Chamorros were pro-abortion when the same article that he quoted from debunked him. Classic case of the narrative, the orange rice, the red rice being more powerful than the red rice. So I keep coming back to this to remind our international radio listening audience that we've got to rebut the narrative whenever it doesn't square with the facts. So today I have an article that ran on KUAM, and it goes like this. Red rice serving up traditional Guam cooking in Las Vegas. A restaurant in Las Vegas is not only where locals missing Guam cuisine can go, but also a place serving up a huge portion of that half-a-day spirit. Joanne Ogun-Chatfrus has more on red rice, capital R, capital red, capital rice. It's one of the many places you can go stateside if you're craving authentic flavors from Guam. Owners Cotman and Frank Tenorio, along with their children, have definitely made a name for themselves, offering up a piece of home on recipes handed down from generation to generation. Their son, Christian Tenorio, who was born on Guam, was recently on island to do some network and stopped by KUAM to talk about how, now again, I'm going to use the word restaurant red rice because they just keep calling it red rice in the article, how the restaurant red rice came to be. My mom was actually one of the first vendors at Chamorro Village. She told me that they would allow her a 6-foot table and just a 10 by 10 space. and she sold everything for $1, whether it was empanada, manhattatizas, tamales guiso, tamales mandioca, the whole 9 yards, honestly, the whole 9 yards. They would move to Northern California, where the family continued serving up island flavors with catering and selling out of the local shops there. In 2005, they made the decision to move to Vegas with hopes of a better opportunity. I guess you could say they took a gamble, Jose, and moved to Vegas. Every Saturday, we sold empanadas, buñuelos aga, and we finally decided to open our restaurant, Red Rice, said Christian. The decision just seemed to just make sense. After all, his mom had been cooking her entire life and had been a familial affair. Even my grandma catered to Japanese tourists when they would go to Cocos Island because I'm from Malesu. Every time the tourists would make a stop, they would cook for them, so I kind of grew up around food. In December 2014, the restaurant Red Rice held a soft opening. No signage, just an invite to family and friends. Through the power of social media, word slowly started to spread about the restaurant dishing up generous portions of the great food and half-a-day spirit. Christian remembered we had a grand opening on January 3 the following year, and over 400 people showing up. When walking into the restaurant, you feel like you're at home and enjoy a great meal, whether it's shrimp patties, lumpia, kelagwan, or any of their plates are loaded with fiesta favorites like barbecue spare ribs, chicken, and, of course, red rice. For over 7 years, Red Rice has continued to thrive, winning the Best in Vegas 2022 in the cultural food category, and even receiving high praise from popular food vloggers and influencers. Honestly, it's the love for the love of the food. The restaurant business isn't easy. You make a lot of sacrifices along the way. I remember volunteering when I was in high school. I missed out on a lot of things. At the end of the day, what's the future? What's long term? A lot of people don't have the hustle or they can't make those sacrifices. If you happen to be in Vegas or want to know more about their story as well as their menu, visit redricelv.com. redricelv.com. Follow them on Facebook under Red Rice and Instagram and the Instagram is at redricelv. So I'll show you a picture. Unfortunately, my printout here is in black and white, but if it were a colored printout, guess what you'd see? Orange rice. You'd see orange at the same color as my red shirt here, right? But any of you tailgaters out there who have an overpowering desire to communicate with these guys and tell them that they made the card here on Tall Tales, this is tremendously good free advertising for them. And just to help them out, I'm going to keep picking on them if I have any sense that you guys are communicating with them, if I see them on Facebook or if somebody from Red Rice Las Vegas calls, I'll keep picking on them just to help them out. But once again, the narrative is more powerful than the truth. Let's take a short break here.
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003 or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dedido, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
I'm going to have to pick up 36, 34 tomorrow. Next item on the card is Dr. Lobeck versus Kaneshiro and Radu. Now, Kaneshiro and Radu are two MDs. They work out of Honolulu. I think they're in the faculty at the university. They're both abortionists, both trying to grow their practices. Both of them make quick trips to Guam, petition the Guam Board of Medical Examiners to license them to practice on Guam. They became licensed to practice on Guam, then became the co-plaintiffs in the suit brought by the American Civil Liberties Union. I don't know where the Liberties comes in with that union, right? The American Civil Liberties Union to enjoin the enforcement of part of our chemical abortion law that said that before a woman can buy chemical abortion pills, she must have a face-to-face with someone who reads her certain input about chemical abortion. And the ACLU brought to enjoin that enforcement of that law. The district court granted an injunction to prohibit reinforcement. The case is now on appeal at the Ninth Circuit. Radu and Kaneshiro are now able to prescribe abortion pills, and we found out there have been about 5 abortions per month using chemical abortion. So congratulations, Kaneshiro and Radu. Now these two, Kaneshiro and Radu, they're not podiatrists. They're not proctologists. They're gynecologists. They're OBGYN. Now, the most famous gynecologist in the whole world is Tom Shea. Yeah. And how do I know that? Because gynecologists ordinarily don't get very famous. They're famous, the rewards of being a gynecologist, if you watch very many movies, is, a gynecologist starts out in practice maybe when he's 30, and by the time he's a grouchy old man like me, he runs into all of these mature adults who want to shake his hand and say, Doc, I'm so grateful to you. You were the one that brought me into the world. And my mom spoke so highly of you. What a wonderful thing for me. I'm so grateful for you. And this is kind of the legacy of being a gynecologist. And Shea, I don't know how many babies Shea has brought into the world. It's up there in huge numbers. But in addition to being a capable gynecologist, Shea also has a genius for self-promotion and has become a household word here on Guam, and I suppose the CNMI, and hard to say where else. So when I think of gynecologists, I think of Tom Shea. Somehow he's always there at midnight, and somehow one of his patients gives birth at like 2 minutes after midnight. Tom Shea takes hold of the trophy every year. And then these two come along, Kaneshiro and Radu, who game the system. Come out here, get admitted to practice just so they can be a plaintiffs in a lawsuit, and plaintiffs in a lawsuit to allow them to increase their income by prescribing chemical abortion pills. Now, obviously, the victims of those chemical abortions are not going to be their legacy. When Kaneshiro and redo are old women. The babies that they aborted are going to be long gone dead.
You mean there's no first baby aborted in the new year?
Not yet. Not yet. Fortunately, we have term limits, Jose. Otherwise, that's something else we could look forward to, right? So, in that spirit, I'm going to read this article that ran in Grassroots Institute of Hawaii over the, but I'm going to edit it a little bit, and I'm going to read it as a letter to me because it is actually addressed to me. I'm going to do a little editing. Dear Robert, Governor promised strong action to address housing. At one point during their speech, they even signed an emergency proclamation to create housing for the homeless. Few would argue with good intentions behind that order. In an effort to cut red tape and get housing built as soon as possible, the governor suspended a series of laws that might hinder that goal. Starting to sound familiar, Jose? I appreciate the governor's passion for this issue and agree that homelessness is a high priority for our state. I also agree that bureaucracy and red tape have become a major barrier to affordable housing. But as much as I agree with the governor's ideas, I cannot fully endorse the method. The emergency proclamation intended to address homelessness might be efficient, but it suffers from the same defect as most emergency orders. It sidesteps the democratic process. Now, you could just substitute Wuhan virus here for homelessness. This is the lesson we learned from the COVID-19 crisis. This is the guy who wrote me the letter. The emergency powers of the governor were intended for situations in which there is an imminent threat to life and health, where there isn't time for the deliberative action that generally characterizes democratic government. Because rule by emergency proclamation effectively cuts out the people's voice via the legislative process. It was also intended to be temporary. Once the imminent danger is passed, the legislative check on executive power must be restored as soon as possible. Governor Green witnessed how his predecessor repeatedly invoked the power and inconvenience of emergency orders during the pandemic, so perhaps it's no surprise that he was tuned to that mechanism to deal with a difficult issue. However well-intentioned his homelessness order might be, it's a Band-Aid approach where more long-term solutions are called for. Taken at face value, most of the governor's homelessness order was good. It waived bureaucratic barriers, etc. However, the governor also waived transparency and procurement laws intended to promote accountability. It's hard to see how these laws were a real obstacle. It seemed as though the point of the homeless order is simply to suspend contracting, procurement, and land use laws just long enough to secure the contracts and approvals needed for this homelessness program. Once again, this is an admirable level of efficiency, but I worry the legislature may learn the wrong lesson from this order. If good government is being held up by red tape, the answer is not to use the emergency proclamation to get around those regulations. The answer is to get rid of the red tape. An emergency proclamation isn't supposed to be a get out of regulations free card to be employed as a relief valve on a vital issue, etc. So, this could have been, with just going through with a sharp pencil, this could have been written about Lilian Guerrero and the whole Wuhan virus. Temporary. And it lasted for 2.5 years? And even then, she only reluctantly let it go. How long did she want it to last, Jose? You got it. I read that article out of sequence. Unfortunately, I don't have the article that I wanted to read on this point. I'll have to bring it tomorrow. But I have another pretty good one here about abortion. And this is babies versus the Food and Drug Administration. And this one comes, of course, from LifeSite News. The FDA has no authority to force pro-life states to allow abortion pills. The Biden administration has pledged to use federal agencies, including the FDA, to make abortion drugs available in all 50 states, even though the Supreme Court said that abortion is a state issue. The House of Representatives took a step in that direction last year with H.R. 1434, purporting to reaffirm the FDA's authority to force pro-life states to allow chemical abortions. This is a big issue when more than half of all abortions in America are done with abortion pills. More than half now, Jose. It's questionable whether the FDA has necessary authority from Congress to force states to allow abortion drugs. I could oppose this. I don't even need to get into abortion. I just oppose it on the basis of federalism. Who is the national government to tell the states what their laws, what their criminal laws ought to prohibit and not? If there's no constitutional underpinning, and there hasn't been since June when the Dobbs decision came down. Congress does not have the votes to do it itself, and using the FDA to do it may be considered an illegal administrative agency workaround, just like the government's illegal OSHA COVID vaccine mandate that was rejected by the Supreme Court last year. In fact, the FDA's original approval process for abortion drug is itself in question. According to a federal court lawsuit in Texas, the FDA illegally approved the abortion drug in 2000 using an expedited process that was only meant for drugs used to treat, quote, illness. Now, of course, the Vanessa Williamses of the world and Lulan Guerrero would tell, well, yeah, pregnancy is an illness. It's an invasion of the mother's body by her own body, right? A woman has a right to do with her own body what she wants. According to the lawsuit, FDA also ignored the potential impact of abortion drugs on the developing bodies of adolescent girls and evidence they cause even more complications than surgical abortions. Beyond the legal issues, there are significant medical problems with abortion pills, especially in states that outlaw surgical abortions. Studies show that more than 1% of all chemical abortions fail to kill the baby. Now remember, the first pill that the mother takes kills the baby in utero, starves the baby to death, so the baby dies. This takes 2 days. Then the mother takes another baby that causes the mother's baby to the mother's body to expel the dead baby. And the instructions are just sit on the toilet, let it happen, and flush the toilet.
And then it gets designated as a miscarriage.
Yeah.
That's the same thing as, and this is going to be gruesome, slitting someone's throat, putting them in a car, and then setting the car on fire.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You're getting rid of the evidence.
Exactly. Yeah, but can you imagine a human, a helpless, innocent human, starved to death, and then the birth process works, and the human remains are disposed of by flushing a toilet? Is that as barbaric as you can get, or is there more barbarity than the pro-abortion folks can come up with?
The only thing I can think of is partial birth, but that's the worst.
That's even worse.
Yep.
Yeah, that's even worse. Yeah. Yeah. More than 1% of those attempted chemical abortions would fail, leaving a live pregnancy. Well, we know what to do there, don't we? Would those women leave the state midway during the abortion process to get a surgical abortion? What if those babies are born with birth defects from the failed abortion? Some of the abortionists will probably get sued for malpractice and might even get around that the pills do not always work. And even if the FDA can keep states from banning all chemical abortions, there are plenty of other possible state restrictions consistent with the state's regulatory authority over the practice of medicine. Examples include laws requiring informed consent, laws requiring an abortionist to be physically present when the abortion drug is administered, laws requiring the abortionist to have admitting privileges at a local hospital to deal with medical complications, and laws banning the mailing of abortion drugs. And what about the FDA's legal duty to promote drug safety? Statistics show that almost 8% of all chemical abortions involve complications, roughly 4 times the risk of surgical abortion, affecting as many as 1 in 5 women. A 2020 FDA report on adverse effects showed the evidence of at least 20 deaths, not counting the babies. 529 life-threatening events and nearly 2,000 severe events, including emergency hysterectomies, ruptured ectopic pregnancies. The FDA even admitted those numbers were severely underreported. Abortion bills sometimes leave dead baby tissue in the mother's body, risking infection, hemorrhage, and often resulting in the need for surgery. Many women with failed abortions go directly to the emergency room, often requiring immediate surgery and sometimes hospitalization for blood transfusion or IV antibiotics. Studies have shown that 1/3 of women after chemical abortions are likely to suffer severe emotional trauma, and the abortion pills can be used in many cases to enable sexual abuse and trafficking. We know that from one of our callers, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring the other article, Dr. Lobeck versus Canishero and Redu tomorrow. Okay, next item on the card. We'll take a short break.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
we want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Okay, so here we are, getting up pretty close to that big halftime show. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to broadcast everybody's favorite Monday morning video, Hope Cristobal fending off Paul Zerzan. It was tough, but she was able to withstand her ground. Yeah. Next item here is from Spectator, and it's called Hockey versus As You Were Gay versus Pride, and it's titled Ivan Provorov and Pride Before the Fall. Hockey is one of those games like lacrosse that alters as it crosses the Atlantic. In Britain, if a man says he's a passionate hockey or lacrosse player, he might get a certain fnar response. In North America, by contrast, it would be unwise to fnar at your average hockey player. A good example comes in the form of Ivan Provorov. He's a big Russian-born ice hockey player who currently plays for the Philadelphia Flyers in the National Hockey League. Not all readers will be following the NFL carefully, and I admit that I'm teetering at the very edge of knowledge as I type this. Still, the NHL grabbed my attention last week because Provorov became the latest victim of big gays overreach. Or to be precise, big LGBTQI pluses overreach. As I've commented before, when gays didn't have any rights, the talk was all about equality and being allowed to do what you wanted so long as it didn't harm anyone else. Remember those days, Jose? God knows I was arguing the case for gay marriage in these pages years before it was cool. But after that, and other victories were won, a cartel of gay groups and others who speak for almost no gays chose to take a harsher turn. Suddenly, Pride Month was to be treated as were the holy days of old. The flag, Freudian slip there, Jose. The flag.
How dare you?
The flag, slip of the tongue. Even that isn't very good, is it? The flag that started off as rainbow became so crazily inclusive that it can now induce epilepsy. Just like a strobe light. You know, people who are epileptic, sometimes when faced with a strobe light, will go into an epileptic seizure. So this guy says, you look at the rainbow flag the wrong way, and it could induce an epileptic seizure. The flag that started off as rainbow became so crazily inclusive that it can now induce epilepsy, at which point had to be flown from all public buildings. There are times when some city centers are positively festooned with these barmy flags, reminiscent of the time the King of Saudi Arabia visited London some years back, and his nation's none-too-welcoming scimitar flag was hung all the way down the mall. But to get back to hockey, for some reason it was decided the other week that the Philadelphia Flyers would be rebranded Pride Night. All the players were told to wear Pride-themed jerseys during the warm-up and wrap their hockey sticks in Pride tape. You know, when I read this, you know what I said to myself, Jose?
What did you say?
I said, what the puck is going on here? Yeah. Provorov refused, missed the warm-up, and when asked why, said, I respect everybody, and I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and to my Russian Orthodox religion, at which point the kindness and toleration crew really kicked in. How dare he? A typical response came from National Hockey League analyst E.J. Hradek. Provorov can get on a plane any day he wants and go back to a place he feels more comfortable. He said, continuing, I understand there's a conflict of sorts going on over there. Maybe they get involved. So in other words, if you don't sign up for the Pride agenda, you go back to Russia and fight in Ukraine because it's what you deserve. The author goes on to say, that's quite a leap right there. in our lifetimes from we just want to be accepted to wear the pride uniform or go back to where you came from and die. It's quite a leap. Well, this gay is on Provorov's side. If the editor of Spectator suddenly went doolally and insisted that everybody in the office must wear a pride jumper and wrap themselves in pride tape before a public appearance, I would refuse, not least because, like a lot of other people, I've had quite enough of this. Now, this is a gay guy saying that. I've had quite enough of this. Gay people make up a tiny percentage of the population, maybe 4%. People who are actually trans, as to the 0.2% who identify that way in the census, including the, quote, look at me, I'm a teenager and I'm not getting enough attention, sort, which is a lot of the census numbers, likely constitute less than 0.1% of the population. But at present, a bewildering amount of energy and airtime is being dedicated to these unrelated minorities. And, without setting up myself as an expert on sexual anarchy, I fail to see what a homosexual has in common, a homosexual man has in common with a man who wants to pretend that he's a woman. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But as Pope Francis said, who am I to judge?
It's like those who lump all the territories together.
Yeah, exactly. At present, a bewildering amount of energy and airtime is being dedicated to these unrelated minorities. The UK parliaments in Edinburgh and Westminster seemed to spend most of last week discussing a subset within a subset of this issue, 16-year-olds self-identifying in the north of Britain. All this while inflation in the country sits at 10.5%. 5 million Brits are claiming out-of-work benefits, and we have a labor deficiency, a supply chain problem, and energy shortages everywhere. Alongside these problems, a few confused teenagers in Glasgow may seem an easy thing to fix, but I just don't think they're anywhere near as important. In fact, I'd go further. I believe a rising tide raises all boats. Now, where did I hear that before? John F. Kennedy, 1960. But I think he probably said an incoming tide raises all boats. Yeah. It wasn't Neil Kinnock. That was Joe Biden. And if we spent less time talking about trans and more time sorting out the economy, anybody who's gender confused would have more money to buy as much lipstick as they want. But back to hockey. The problem is that the current moment is an overcorrection boosted by woke Inc., including woke sport. When there were real gay rights to be won, the corporate and sporting worlds were nowhere to be seen. Okay, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back for the third period of this hockey game.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Taking action. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. The Memphis Police Department disbanding the Special Police Unit, which included the 5 officers who were shown in body cam footage beating 29-year-old Tyree Nichols during a traffic stop earlier this month. Nichols later died from his injuries. Fox's Steve Harrigan has more from Memphis, Tennessee.
That special police unit was known as the Scorpions. It had anywhere from 30 to 50 members. They did very aggressive policing in some of the highest crime areas of Memphis. They were in unmarked cars. The family of Tyree Nichols had asked that they be disbanded, and now they are permanently done for.
The officers are charged with second-degree murder and are slated to be arraigned in court on February 17th. More details emerging regarding the recent shooting in Half Moon Bay, California. Fox's Jackie Ibanez with an update.
That massacre left 7 workers dead at 2 farms in Half Moon Bay last week. Prosecutors now know that the accused 66-year-old gunman became enraged when his boss billed him $100 for damaging a forklift. The supervisor was the first to die. In an interview with a local television station, the suspect alleges years of bullying by his coworkers. He's being charged with 7 counts of murder.
Prosecutors have requested no bail. They say the suspect isn't a U.S. citizen and has reason to escape. Russia's increasing attacks and targeting soldiers in eastern Ukraine as Ukrainian troops are waiting for tanks sent by the U.S., Germany, and other European nations.
Ukrainian officials here in Kyiv are moving on to their next military agenda items. That's fighter jets and long-range missiles. Russian shelling hammered the southern town of Kherson, where residents lived for months under occupation. At least 3 people were killed. Across the east of Ukraine, civilians have tried to flee Russian attacks, but with such a large front line, it's difficult.
That's Fox's Trey Yeast in Kyiv, Ukraine. America is listening to Fox News.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dedido, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagatnya location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
The teams are set for Super Bowl 57 in Glendale, Arizona. Fox's Tim McMaster has more.
The Chiefs and Eagles are no strangers to the Super Bowl. Philadelphia won Super Bowl 52, and the Chiefs are headed to their 3rd big game in 4 years, winning Super Bowl 54. The game will feature 2 of the most exciting quarterbacks in the NFL in Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid is leading the Chiefs to the Super Bowl for the 3rd time as head coach to face the first team that he took to the Super Bowl. Another fun tie-in is the Kelce brothers. Travis is the Chiefs all-pro tight end, Jason the Eagles center. The 2 share a podcast, and there will likely be plenty of trash talk between now and kickoff.
Testimony resuming on Monday in the murder trial of Alex Murdaugh. He stands accused of killing his wife and son. Fox's Laura Ingle has the latest.
Alec Murdaugh, who has been charged with the brutal shooting deaths of his wife Maggie and their 22-year-old son Paul on the family's hunting estate in South Carolina, told arriving officers he believed the murders could be connected to a deadly boating accident which his son Paul was involved in, telling officers his son had received many threats after a friend of his was killed in that crash. Now, Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were both shot at close range, leaving a bloody crime scene behind. When Alec Murdaugh was questioned by law enforcement that night, officers noticed there was no visible blood on his hands, arms, and his white T-shirt, even though he told investigators that he had touched their bodies to check them when he arrived.
The original actress who played Wednesday on The Addams Family has passed away at the age of 64. Lisa Loring's daughter said her mom died of complications from a stroke caused by high blood pressure. And Barrett Strong, one of Motown's founding artists, has died at the age of 81. He sang the popular single Money, That's What I Want, and collaborated on the classics I Heard It Through the Grapevine and War, and on several hits for The Temptations. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply. All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best. Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003 or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Yeah, we got some additions to Rogues Gallery, didn't we, Jose?
Lots of additions.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of folks out there are wondering, how could I possibly be so famous as to have my picture in the Tailgaters Rogues Gallery? So I know you've done this before, Jose, but I think you probably ought to tell everybody again how to get on Rogues Gallery.
Well, it bears repeating, Bob. They can actually, if they're watching on the streams on Facebook and YouTube, you can click on the link that's provided in the comments or point your browser to thepoint.gu, the official website of this radio station. Click on the link with the t-shirt and the beard. It'll bring you to the purveyor. Order your shirt. When it arrives, take a selfie and send that selfie to the Point's WhatsApp number at 671-797-8255. And you too can grow the Rogues Gallery.
Wow. Doesn't get any better than that. How much does it cost? Probably costs a lot of money, doesn't it?
To be added to the Rogues Gallery, my final calculations is nothing.
Really? It probably should cost a lot of money, but, that's the nice thing about Tall Tales. It's everything you ever wanted to know about so many things, and it doesn't cost you a nickel. There. Okay, let's get back to the card here. I was dealing with gay versus pride and hockey, and picking up where I left off. Back again to hockey. The problem is that the current moment is an overcorrection boosted by woke Inc., including woke sport. When there were real gay rights to be won, the corporate and sporting worlds were nowhere to be seen. They're all over the rainbow, people now, only because the battles are won. As a result, they're overdoing it like all new converts and people are getting annoyed. Most people are pretty tolerant, but they've had enough of this endless indoctrination, the gay police cars and transgender crosswalks, the awareness raising, and frankly, being lectured by a lot of deranged people. And now the counter-reaction is underway, in America, a horrific story has emerged of a gay couple from Atlanta, Georgia, who have been charged with sexual abuse and pimping out their 2 adopted sons. Have you been following this, Jose? Jose's on the phone. I've been following it, and it's on Town Hall, if you haven't picked up on it. It's, these two gay guys in their early 30s are married, and they've adopted 2 young boys. And what they have done to these young boys, I mean, to say it is criminal is a horrible understatement of what they've done to them. It's a series of 4 articles. I would urge anyone who's interested to pick it up at Town Hall. As each new detail emerges, it gets worse. But it's one of those moments when you feel the air coming out of a highly pressured radiator. The world's media have not been coy about saying that it is a gay couple who have been so charged rather than a straight couple. And prominent conservative campaigners in the U.S. have taken the opportunity to claim this is all goes to prove something. We let male couples adopt children and then act surprised when this happens, one wrote. You can feel the gloves coming off, connecting homosexuality and pedophilia is one of the oldest anti-gay troops of the lot. Using one case to smear a whole group is almost the definition of bigotry. Yet, ugly as it is, this too is predictable. Hit everyone over the head with your pride stick for long enough, and at some point people will search for a weapon to hit back. Game on, as we say in the hockey circles. A really interesting article written by a gentleman who holds himself out as being a homosexual and says, you know, all of this overreaction, the gay pride thing, etc., is really hurting what they have achieved. And I can only reflect on my own feelings about this. I can be pretty tolerant of other people, so long as I'm given the opportunity to just mind my own business. Ordinarily, I'm not that crazy about minding somebody else's own business. Now, if you're a public official, yeah, I'm really going to get involved with what you're doing with the power of being a public official. But you know what someone does with someone else, if he's not breaking any laws, I can be tolerant. I can't tell you I can be really accepting, but I can be tolerant. But nowadays, even tolerance is not enough. If you don't embrace, you are a bad person, and you run the risk of being canceled. And that's what this is all about. And this guy is saying, yeah, see what we've done? Yeah, we've pushed it too far, and now we're working against ourselves. Very interesting coming from that perspective. All right, let's see. He's probably in the green. No, he's not in the green room. It's none other than Greg. Why are black construction companies painted like school buses? Isn't there a law against that? Tell me a little bit more, Greg.
Yeah, Bob, I'm just curious. I thought buses that are school buses.
Well, tell me what you saw. Lay the foundation first.
Well, I'm traveling Route 1, and I come up to this bus. And as I approach the bus to my right, he's on the left lane. All I see is the sign says black construction, but everything identifying a school bus is on that bus. I thought that there is a law.
Okay, before we get into the law, and a good lawyer will tell you, you know, you really don't look for legal questions until you examine the facts. So you saw 2 school buses. Did they have? And they said black construction on the side.
Yes, they have they stick the sticker of black construction on it.
Okay.
And when I passed the bus that had the sticker black construction, there were H2 workers in it.
Okay, so you saw a bus that said black construction on the side hauling...
It's a sticker. It's just a sticker, but everything is just exactly like a bus.
Okay.
A school bus.
Hold on. So there was a sticker on the side of the bus that said black construction.
Yes, sir.
Okay, were there any signs or lettering on the side of the bus?
No, just a sticker, and like I said, I thought it was a school bus.
Why did you think it was a school bus?
Because it looked exactly like a school bus, Bob.
What color was it?
Yellow with black stripes with black letters, and it also has that top where the lights are flashing red.
What did the black letters say?
That's what it says.
That's all?
Top.
It didn't say Government of Guam School Bus?
No, it didn't even have a government plate.
Yeah, okay. Well,
but
I'm going to rule from the bench on this one, Greg, okay?
I'm waiting.
Okay. I don't think there's any law that says that you can't have a yellow bus with that legend on the back. I think the law would come into play if that were not a real school bus and those lights were deployed. Then I think you're breaking the law. But I suspect what happens is that Black buys old school buses, rehabs them, and uses them to haul workers to the job site. And if that's the case, if it doesn't say Government of Guam School Bus on the side, I don't know that we get into a legal determination unless those lights were turned on to allow the passengers to disembark, Greg.
Well, here's the thing, Bob, and I ain't going to make no story. He had his flashing lights on.
He did, huh? Okay, well, now you got something. Okay, let me check that out, Greg, and I'll get back to you tomorrow, okay?
Thanks, Bob. You have a good day and stay safe.
All right, Greg. Yeah, now that would be something else if he used those flashing lights on something that's not a school bus. Because, you wouldn't want drivers to say, well, I see the flashing lights, but maybe it's just black construction, so I don't have to stop. Okay. Let me see here. Where do I go next? Next, I've got Governor. Kind of got out of order here. I've got Governor Calvo versus Governor Leon Guerrero. And this is something, again, that ran on Jungle Watch. Jungle Watch has been very prolific lately. If you don't go to Jungle Watch every day, your chances are you're probably missing out on something. The URL is Jungle Watch, one word, junglewatch.info. Some very interesting stuff there. And the one I'm looking at right now is titled Governor Eddie Calvo versus Governor Leon Guerrero. I didn't have too much trouble figuring out a title for this item on the card, did I? Governor Leon Guerrero has filed with the Supreme Court of Guam a request for declaratory judgment relative to the status of Bell's Law, which in 1990 broadly criminalized abortion. Tall Tales talk show host Bob Klitzkie discussed the governor's action a bit on his show this Friday and raised some important issues with the filing. However, due to its length, 46 pages, Bob advised that he would study the filing over the weekend and get back to us on Monday. It's going to be Tuesday. With an in-depth analysis, so we'll have to wait for that. Meanwhile, as Attorney General Doug Moylan points out, the governor appears to be, quote, maneuvering. Whatever opinion the Supreme Court issues will not be binding. However, it's possible that the legal analysis could be used by the district court once it picks up the issue, which would explain the maneuvering by Adelup. On its face, the governor's filing appears to be a typical liberal progressive end run around the governor and the voters to get the courts to legislate from the bench. Instead of maneuvering, the governor should just get her pals in the legislature to do their job and introduce a bill to repeal Bell's Law. Of course. It's not only simple, it's exactly what's supposed to happen and why we elect these people in the first place. In fact, the governor doesn't even have to ask the legislature to do anything. She can introduce a bill herself and even call the legislature into special session to vote on it. That's true. Those are organic act powers of the governor. So why isn't she doing that? That's not hard to understand. The governor, like most liberal progressives, knows she can't compete in the free arena of ideas, so she's running to the courts for cover. This is the same thing cowardly legislators do when they don't want to engage controversial legislation out in the open. They run to the Attorney General for an opinion they can hide behind. And it's good that Tim is talking in terms of cover, because if you don't understand cover, you'll have a hard time really understanding what goes on in the legislature. Cover means some sort of a plausible narrative that they can issue to cover their you-know-whats when they engage in something that might be disfavored by some of the electorate. Well, I didn't really want to do it, but because of the Attorney General's opinion, I had no choice. So don't get mad at me. I got cover here. The governor, like most liberal progressives, knows that she can't compete in the free arena of ideas, so she's running to the courts for cover. This is the same thing cowardly legislators do when they don't want to engage controversial legislation out in the open. They run to the Attorney General for an opinion they can hide behind. It's not only cowardly, this sort of thing compromises our rights as citizens to the design protections of three co-equal branches of government, and we should take note to vote these cowards out next time around. Neither the Supreme Court of Guam nor the District Court can alter or annul the statute, which is what the governor is after here. So what she's really up to, what she is maneuvering to do, as Doug Moylan describes it, again, it's not hard to understand. The governor knows that her pals in the legislature are too cowardly to move forward on a bill to get rid of Bell's Law. So what we're talking about here is that the pro-abortion legislators in the legislature could introduce a one-page bill. Public Law 20-134 is repealed in its entirety. And of course, they'd have to put a savings clause in and an effective date because they're not necessary.
Notwithstanding.
Yeah, and notwithstanding any, yeah. But that's all they got to do, just a simple one-liner. And this is the kind of thing, if you're really pro-abortion, this is what you ought to do. You do that, and then you push the chairman of rules to get it assigned to a committee quickly. You notice up your committee. You have a couple days of hearings. You take all the testimony. You do your committee report. You send it to rules, and you ask rules, put this on the agenda forthwith. And then you've got 8 votes, and you repeal Bell's Law. That's why you are there, folks. Yeah, not to dress up like Santa Claus, not to lay a foundation for a good job with the executive after you hang it up. But so the governor is simply maneuvering to give her pals cover when it comes to actually introducing legislation to not only repeals Bell's Law, but probably after that push forward legislation that will draconically enshrine legal abortion in Guam's law. And if the governor has her way, legalize infanticide as well, given her previous public testimony opposing a bill that would require normal medical care for children who survive failed abortions. You'll see that on Friday again. The correct way to deal with Bell's law, of course, is for the legislative process to play out, and then whatever the outcome, let it be challenged in the courts. In other words, legislature first, courts last, and not the other way around. This is exactly how then Governor Calvo handled a bill that became Public Law 33-187, and how he handled it is a lesson for all lawmakers, especially the current governor. Upon signing what was probably the most controversial piece of legislation ever engaged in the history of Guam's legislature, here's what Governor Calvo said. I recognize Bill 326 has several legal and technical concerns. A major concern is over the bill's retroactive application of the civil statute of limitations for child sexual abuse cases. Whether such retrospect will pass constitutional muster is unclear. Despite these questions today, I will err on the side of the aggrieved. If I'm wrong, then the courts will tell me so. Or perhaps the legislature will craft new legislation in order to clarify these issues. And of course, so far, the Public Law 326 is not unconstitutional, but the difference between a politician and a statesman right here. He's siding with the aggrieved, and Lou is looking for cover. Lou and the rest.
Yep.
Yeah.
She should probably ask the Archdiocese also. Oh, that's the cover she doesn't want.
No. Okay, next item on the card is Wrigley Field for the seventh inning stretch.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dededo, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Field in Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark, a place I've been a few times myself. I'd like to go back someday just to see if nostalgia is as good as it used to be, Jose. So picking up the card here, I've got one here, Lou and the Dems versus Life, Lou and the Democrats. I've had this article for quite some time, but it's really appropriate right now. And it ran in Red State, and it's titled, Democrats lose their minds after a House passes bill requiring care for babies born alive during failed abortions. I was going to read this before the Lulian Guerrero show, but we can't run the show today. Shortly after the House passed the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act on Monday, which requires doctors to provide care for babies born alive after failed abortion attempts, senior Democrat lawmakers blew up Twitter in an apoplectic meltdown, declaring the bill extreme and then some. As Fox News reported, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who for Tall Tales purposes is known as Chucky, Vice President Kamala Harris, and of course, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the very religious person who has referred to on-demand late-term abortion as sacred ground, were the most histrionic. Here's a bit of background on the bill via Fox. The Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act says any infant born alive following an abortion attempt or that survives the abortion is a legal person for all purposes under the laws of the United States. Now, you wouldn't think you'd need to say that in a statute, Jose, but you do. Doctors and healthcare workers would have to keep the child alive as a reasonably diligent and conscientious healthcare practitioner would render to any other child born alive. A child born in an abortion clinic that does not have adequate healthcare facilities would be responsible for transporting the child to a hospital. It's already illegal for doctors and nurses to deny care to individuals. Nearly every House Democrat on Wednesday voted against the legislation, which passed 220 to 210. All the no votes came from Democrats who claimed the bill would endanger more children or further complicate medical decisions. Oh, you got to avoid complications. House Republicans made a choice indeed. To save the lives of babies, your party demands have no rights of their own. Pelosi said, Democrats believe everyone deserves the right to access to reproductive health services without fear of violence, intimidation, or harassment. Wrong again, Nancy. First, intentionally killing an unborn child is not a reproductive health service. I'm no doctor, and I'm damn sure not a Democrat, but I'm pretty sure reproductive health care happens before, dare I say, a woman gets pregnant and throughout a pregnancy, but ends when an unborn child is intentionally killed. You know, you talk about basic common sense, the truth, the facts.
It's less about individual rights of the mother and more about we got to finish the job.
Exactly.
Kill that living human, innocent human.
Yeah, well, you know, the mother already paid for the abortion. She's probably going to demand a refund from the doctor if that baby is alive.
Do they have a guarantee? Is that what it is?
Beeping horn. Yeah. Democrats will always defend reproductive freedoms against extreme Republicans who disrespect a woman's right to choose the size and timing of her family. That's Pelosi. There are serious personal decisions that must be made by women, guided by faith, physician, and family, not by politicians. The lying disgust of this woman, who brazenly drags out her devout Catholic faith at politically expedient times, is beyond the pale, not to mention her sneering condescension when doing so. Sneering Chucky reacted similarly. The MAGA Republican-controlled House is putting on display their extreme views on women's health with legislation that does not even have the support of the American people. And this is the author's words, not mine. Oh, clever, Chucky. Tie in the evil MAGA Republicans. You know, Trump's derangement syndrome is so serious. You know, that when these Democrats write their Christmas cards to their friends, they've got to get some TDS into the Christmas cards. Pro-life Americans are concerned about the health of unborn children, despite your party's reframing of the abhorrent act that you people defend with every bone in your hypocritical bodies. Last but certainly not least, Madam Word Salad Supreme. Now, what do you suppose her name is, Jose?
KH. Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris. She predictably weighed in, although it appears that her tweet was written by an adult as opposed to a fourth grader. House Republicans passed an extreme bill today that will further jeopardize the right to reproductive health care in our country. This is yet another attempt by Republican legislators to control women's bodies. This is getting really boring, Kamala. So the article goes on with more of this, but then I also picked up when it's, you know, you read this stuff, you wonder, you just have to wonder about the human race. And this I picked up from LifeSite News. Pro-choice Christian Democrat cites Bible passage to argue against pro-life legislation. Gross. During a House meeting this week, a Democrat argued against pro-life legislation using a passage from the Bible to defend herself. Hillary Scholten, who is beginning her first term representing Michigan's 3rd District, spoke out against the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which was passed by the House on Wednesday. The legislation we know what the legislation states. The article goes on to say, I rise today in support of parental and maternal rights in opposition to H.R. 26, Scholten began her comments. I recently shared publicly about my own experience navigating a complex miscarriage and the loss of my daughter. As a pro-choice Christian who chose life, this issue is so personal to me. My faith informs my action, but it doesn't dictate the policy of an entire nation, she continued. And further, when I read Scripture, I turn to passages, and I'm guided by passages like Jeremiah 1, verse 5, which states, I knew you before I formed you, and I placed you in your mother's womb. It doesn't say the government's womb or the speaker's womb. It says the mother's womb.
That's just ignorant. Wow.
Yeah. I knew you, Jeremiah 1, verse 5, which states, I knew you before I formed you, and I placed you in your mother's womb. It doesn't say the government's womb or the speaker's womb. It says the mother's womb.
It says you were given worth before you were born.
Yeah.
I have maybe a compromise.
Uh-huh.
After a baby is born, despite an abortion, because of a botched abortion, we put the baby on a uninhabited island, give it a 2-day head start, and then put the doctor on the island and try to catch it. You know, at least they would still give them that opportunity
a fighting
chance, right?
Yeah.
It always seems fair.
Yeah. Well, I wonder whatever happened when we talk about biblical wisdom. Whatever happened to the wisdom of Solomon, Jose?
Well, maybe that Congress lady turned into a pillar of saltiness.
Yeah. After that, you know, I mean, talk about coming up with your own interpretation. The mother's womb, the government's womb. The government doesn't own wombs. Speakers don't. Well, maybe the speaker. Yeah, Speaker Pelosi owned one. Yeah. Then this Scholten goes on to say, I believe life is precious, but I reject the idea that if I embrace the sanctity of life, I also must be forced to invite the federal government in to regulate it. We must protect families from unnecessary government intrusion into the most sacred, once again, and personal decisions of our lives and our children's lives.
What?
3rd District of Michigan. I wonder if there's serial mental retardation in the 3rd District.
She drank the water. Is this Detroit?
Yeah, Flint. She must have used the Flint water. The popular pro-abortion argument that a woman has a right to abortion because her body is involved ignores the reality that while the growing baby is inside, and the story says his or her mother's womb, the child remains a distinct and unrepeatable human life. Additionally, the bill that Scholten protested would not prohibit abortion. Rather, the legislation would require medical professionals to treat babies who survive botched abortions with the same dignity they show newborn whose lives are not threatened in the womb, recognizing these children as human beings. The bill also condemns the attacks on pro-life pregnancy centers that took place in the wake and aftermath of the Dobbs decision. Although passed in the Republican-led House, the proposals are not necessarily expected to pass the Senate, which is controlled by Democrats. A similar measure was introduced in Montana, but voters rejected the proposal to protect newborn abortion survivors in 2022 midterm elections. Similarly, multiple states, including Michigan and Vermont, enshrined a constitutional right to abortion on demand up to birth. Yeah, the fight's not over. We've still got a lot of work to do, Jose.
I'm waiting for Underwood's article on seeing Jane's revenge wannabes on Guam.
Yeah. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs, and then we'll come back to Waterworks versus Cortec.
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003 or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Okay, next item on the card is titled Waterworks versus Cortec. And this goes back to that real property dispute where Cortec claims that they own the realty where the Waterworks sewage treatment plant is located. This is complicated. This story's been around for a while. I haven't gotten to it, but it's important. And it goes like this. It's ran in... I think it ran in the Post. No, it's Guam PDN, sorry. Waterworks asks court to hear new arguments in land dispute with Cortec. The Waterworks Authority wants permission to raise new arguments and get a judge's ruling in its $220 million legal battle with Cortec, which claims to own land being used for the island's Northern District wastewater treatment plant. The 2018 lawsuit, originally filed by Gov Guam and later joined by the Waterworks, had an April 2021 deadline for both sides to file motions in the case, including any motions for summary judgment. But GWA wants Superior Court Judge Elise Iriarte to exercise her discretion and accept a new motion for summary judgment by the water agency, stating there is good cause for the judge to allow it. Now, one of the really important things that happens in litigation is scheduling. And a judge will enter something called a pretrial order, and the pretrial order tells the lawyers when they must have completed various things. And for instance, a motion cutoff date. If you're going to file a motion, you got to file it by such and such date, or the court won't hear it. And that's what we're talking about here. Apparently, the motion cutoff date was April 2021. But the way courts are set up, if a judge has discretion, and then the way you get the judge to invoke her discretion is you file papers with the court called motions. And that's what lawyers do. They file motions. So the motion cutoff was April 21, but GWA wants Judge Elise Iriarte to accept a new motion for summary judgment by the water agency, stating there's good cause for the judge to do it. So that was a motion filed by the Waterworks. Cortex last week opposed GWA's motion, telling the judge it likely would prolong the case for 2 years, depriving Cortex of the finality and just compensation it requires. GovGuam and the Department of Land Management sued Cortex in 2018, seeking the court's permission to revoke or change the certificates of title land management issued in 2010 for disputed Dededo property, which used to belong to the U.S. military. GWA has operated a treatment plant at the site since 1980. The Waterworks Authority Northern District Wastewater Treatment Plant in Dededo on November, according to land management, one of the land registrars erroneously issued certificates of title for the property, making 4 different mistakes. I've been through this one myself, Jose. Back during the Wars of Bishop Succession, when a certificate of title issued for the Jonia property, upon which the Redemptus Mater Seminary was built, and the chain of title contained something called a declaration of deed restriction. The concerned Catholics of Guam hired an attorney who examined that document and said that document is a conveyance in fee simple. So what has happened is Archbishop Aparon has given away that property, which was property of the Archdiocese, to a board or to a corporation called Redemptus Mater that had 4 directors, 3 of whom lived in New Jersey, and also subject to by a board of control, all of the members of which were the members of the Neo-Catechumenal Way. And a certificate of title was issued that didn't even mention that declaration of deed restriction. And the registrar of titles at that time was Andrew Santos. Now the law says that the only way you can correct a certificate of title is an interested party, or that the registrar of titles can bring suit in the Superior Court to correct it. Now, at that time, the Director of Land Management was ex officio registrar of titles. And he wrote a letter saying, reporting that was the Attorney General's advice, that he had prepared papers to bring suit to correct the certificate, but he never did. Yeah, he never did. Because the Attorney General at that time, Liz Anderson, said, well, you know what? The owner of the property surrendered the title to the Department of Land Management so that now they can correct it. That's what the fight was all about, Jose. Now, I'm not going to go any farther into that. I just lay that out for background. saying that the certificate of title mechanism is not all it is cracked up to be, because it depends on a non-lawyer making really heavy-duty legal decisions. That's the first problem with certificates of title. Second, the whole mechanism was developed by a guy named Torrens, who was an Aussie, and he developed it in the 19th century, before we had Xerox machines, digital recordings, etc. So when you're talking a certificate of title, that certificate of title is not just evidence of the title to the real property. And I have to explain a little bit what that word means. We think title, well, the title of the judge is judge, right? And I've got a certificate of title for my car, and if I sell the car, title to real property actually is kind of a theoretical will-o'-the-wisp, because the person who has fee simple absolute title to the real property in most jurisdictions doesn't have a snazzy piece of paper with coats of arms on it and seals and all that stuff. You determine who has fee simple title by doing what's called an abstract of title. This is the way it's done in most of the states. And the abstract of title goes through the entire chain of title, going all the way back to the get-go, bringing it up through the last conveyance. A lawyer then takes that abstract of title and examines it and said, based on the abstract of title, which I examined, I certify the title in fee simple absolute goes to Mr. John, is in Mr. John Doe. That's what title to real property really means. Some people don't understand the showtime for Tall Tale. I never turn this off. You know why, Jose?
Why is that?
I never turn it back on if I do.
I hear you.
Yeah. So that's what title means. What fee simple title means. It means because when it comes to land, owning land is not like owning a car. You can't park it in your garage and lock up the garage. It's just there. You can't come out there with a backhoe and load all of that real property in 400,000 dump trucks and take it somewhere else. So what you have when you're talking about title to real property is you have a system of documentation with which you can invoke state violence to enforce your rights. That's what it really means. And this goes all the way back to England, back in the feudal times, where the feudal lord had fee, which was an anglicization of the Old English word feof, F-E-O-F. That's where the word fee comes from, right? So the feudal lord was enfeoffed with all of the land, and there were various subtenancies under the feudal lord who owed service to the feudal lord based on their subtenancies. But the fee simple title absolute was in the lord. And in order for the lord to sell the land to somebody else, there had to be something called livery of season, S-E-I-S-N, again, which is a really arcane word. So that's how the system developed. Guess what? We're still using that system today. Yeah. So when you go to land management and you look at the chain of title to real property, you go all the way back. You have to go all the way back to that Spanish patent and then bring it up to the last conveyance. That's what title means. But this guy Torrens down in Australia said, I've come up with a better idea. We'll come up with the certificate of title, and the registrar of titles will examine the abstract of Blackacre, and based on that abstract, will issue a certificate of title to the owner in fee, and it'll say their name or names or whatever at the top, and then underneath that there will be several spaces, and in those spaces memorials can be written. So let's say that Jack is the fee simple owner of Blackacre. Jack has a note with the Bank of Guam. He signs a mortgage with the Bank of Guam. The mortgage is recorded at the Department of Land Management and served on the Registrar of Titles, who then puts a memorial in that certificate of title that says mortgage in favor of Bank of Guam. When the mortgage is satisfied, the Registrar of Titles doesn't get in there with whiteout. He just puts another mortgage, because when the mortgage is satisfied, a paper called satisfaction of mortgage is retired, and that becomes a memorial on the certificate of title. Now, knowing how complicated land transactions can be, and knowing the period of time involved, you can see that this is not something you should be doing at home. And it's not a job for amateurs, and it's not a job for laymen. And that's the way we've been doing it. In fact, the average lawyer, I think, would kind of shudder if he were served up this same kind of project, because you really have to, the lawyer has to really understand the law of conveyancing, and then there's a lot of work looking through all of those documents. So when Torrance came up with this system, the idea was that piece of paper, in addition to being evidence of where title lay, it actually was the title. That's why, in order to correct an error, you had to have a judge order the correction. So that's where this mess started. And the Waterworks is saying that certificate of title, saying that Cortec was the owner in fee simple to that real property, has 4 errors in it. And given my own experience, I would not be surprised if they're absolutely correct. Then you'll remember that this is one of those crazy ancestral lands commission cases, which has made the show before, and I've talked about that case because...
Who's on first?
Yeah. Remember the Ancestral Lands Commission said, okay, we're going to give you a quitclaim deed, but you got to go to court to make sure it's good. I mean, when you're dealing with land titles, you never do that. And here we are. We're still paying for it right now. So I'm going to pick this up tomorrow because it's really important. And, I think it's kind of educational because most people understand that we have certificates of title and they kind of know what they look like. I would really like to abolish that system, because if the system worked the way Torrance thought it should work, we wouldn't need title insurance company. But I'll get back to that tomorrow when I get to it on the card. Right now, it's time for me to talk a little bit about our president. On July 8, 2021, this is what happened. The president tried to put a happy face on the U.S. pullout from Afghanistan as his deadly failure there loomed. Quote, the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely, Biden told reporters one before the insurgent group seized control. Biden promised that unlike the chaotic end of the Vietnam War, there's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. It's not at all comparable. Weeks later, nearly 200 Americans had to be airlifted from Kabul's Barron Hotel in U.S. Army Chinooks. Biden addressed reporters by yelling, "What the hell? What do you do all the time?" Now, here we go. Now, let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Getting down to business. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. With the U.S. reaching its debt ceiling, the Treasury Department resorting to extraordinary measures to pay the nation's bills, as June 5th is the deadline to take action or risk default. President Biden is expected to meet with House Speaker McCarthy on Wednesday for debt limit talks. On CBS's Face the Nation, the speaker says he is optimistic about the upcoming meeting with the president.
I want to sit down together, work out an agreement that we can move forward to put us on a path to balance, at the same time not put any of our debt in jeopardy at the same time.
The White House has said it has no intention of making concessions on the matter. Civil rights leaders are calling for law enforcement reform following the fatal beating of black motorist Tyree Nichols by police officers in Memphis on January 7th. Tennessee NAACP State President Gloria Sweetlove praising the Memphis PD's decision to dissolve the Scorpion unit on Saturday.
We've come to applaud Chief C.J. Davis for doing the right thing, for not waiting 6 months or a year, but rooting out what was bad and doing it quickly.
Sweetlove also said she was glad the protests in Memphis were peaceful. The man who kept the Monterey Park gunman from killing more people after he had committed a mass shooting at a dance hall was honored for his heroism.
The situation still feels so surreal to me.
Brandon Tsai is a reluctant hero, but his actions last week saved lives. He disarmed Hu Can Tran, who had just killed 11 and wounded 9 others in Monterey Park. He was honored in Alhambra for his actions and shared that he knew those victims.
That's Fox's Gernal Scott. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
New details emerging about one of the suspects accused of raping LSU sophomore Madison Brooks, who later died after being hit by a car. Fox's Alexandria Hoff has the report.
3 of the 4 males charged in the rape of Madison Brooks had bonded out of prison, but that was short-lived for 18-year-old Kayvon Washington, who was arrested again the very next day. According to documents obtained by the New Orleans Advocate, Washington faces a separate rape charge stemming from an attack on a 12-year-old girl reported back in 2020. Washington and an unnamed 17-year-old have been charged with the third-degree rape of Brooks, a 19-year-old LSU sophomore who died days later. 2 other men, 27-year-old Everett Lee and 18-year-old Kason Carver, have been charged for being present but not taking part. Police say Washington and the 17-year-old had raped a heavily intoxicated Brooks in the back of a vehicle before the 4 dropped her off at a random location. She was then fatally struck by a separate car.
An attorney representing the defendant says the sex was consensual. Police say they don't believe that claim. A sweeping abortion bill has been passed by the Minnesota State Senate. Fox's Brooke Singman reports.
Critics of Minnesota's new abortion bill say it is the most extreme in the nation. Now, the new legislation legalizes abortion without limits at any time during pregnancy. Demonstrators against and in favor of the new bill gathering at the Minnesota State Capitol in St. Paul as the high-stakes vote took place. Now, Senate Minority Leader Mark Johnson responding to the bill saying, quote, "Today we are not codifying Roe v. Wade or Doe v. Gomez. Gomez, we are enacting the most extreme bill in the country regarding youth sterilization, late-term abortions, and public liability for a vast array of reproductive services. Now, Republicans proposed many amendments to the bill to add some protection for the unborn, but all were eventually shot down.
Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz is expected to sign the bill into law. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Have a day and a happy new year from KFC. And me, I'm Colonel Sanders. And to kick off the new year, I'm bringing back one of my best deals, the $25 fill-up bucket. That's 10 pieces of original recipe drumsticks and thighs with 2 large sides of red rice for only $25. It's the highest caliber meal for you to spend less money. KFC's $25 fill-up bucket is available at all KFC restaurants island-wide and here for a limited time. KFC, it's finger-licking good.
Papa.